In 2018, the world watched as the United States fired the first shot in what would become the largest economic standoff in modern history. Headlines called it a trade war. Tariffs were slapped on billions of dollars worth of goods. And China retaliated. But behind the news flashes and import taxes lies something deeper, a global economic reset. This story isn't really about tariffs. It's about power, leverage, and an uncomfortable truth. That for decades, China's rise was built on a set of rules the West no longer wants to play by. In March 2018, President Donald Trump announced sweeping tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum. Within weeks, the list expanded: electronics, machinery, furniture, even seafood. By 2020, tariffs covered over $360 billion in Chinese goods. China, in turn, hit back with $110 billion in retaliatory tariffs. But while both sides took economic hits, the question remains: why was the US so aggressive? Because tariffs weren't the problem, they were the reaction. The United States had watched for years as China grew its economy at breakneck speed. But it wasn't just hard work and innovation. It was also massive government subsidies to favored companies, currency manipulation to keep exports cheap, weak enforcement of intellectual property, and barriers to entry for foreign businesses. US companies entering China were often forced to share trade secrets. Meanwhile, Chinese companies enjoyed open access to Western markets. In Washington, this wasn't seen as competition, it was exploitation. Kevin O'Leary, in an interview, did not hold back.
We need to circle the wagons and the automobiles and whatever we've got around China. China is our adversary. China's not a rival.
Yeah, that's true. You know, the market's already moved on. We're making an assumption that there will be deals with Europe, the rest of the countries. I don't know if it's going to be reciprocal at 10% or zero. That's happening. But the China deal is different. There's a large negotiation here that goes beyond just tariffs. I've been an advocate for 400%. I wish they'd go right to the top, just shut down trade until she comes to the table. I'm focused on IP theft and correcting the WTO access to resolving trade disputes. As a guy that does business there, wow, I've been screwed. And I'm kind of tired of it, and so are millions of others who've had all their IP ripped off. I don't just want a trade deal with China. Trade with China isn't trade, because they steal all the IP. So what they do is they steal the IP out of the US after it's a proven product in the market, manufacture it there, and trade it back to us. That's not the trade I want. So I'm just speaking out for American entrepreneurship and IP across every company that's been ripped off by China. I want that resolved in the deal. So great for everybody else. Love the European thing. Wonderful. All that. That's great. Let's deal with China. Let's get this thing worked out, because we're in an economic war with them. No more ripping off the IP. Done with that.
In a now viral interview, venture capitalist Chamath Palihapitiya explained it bluntly. America offshored prosperity to buy cheap stuff. The middle class was sacrificed so that companies could improve their margins. According to Chamath, the US got addicted to cheap Chinese goods, and in return gave away its manufacturing base. But tariffs, particularly Trump's, were, as he says, the first attempt in decades to say, we want fairness back.
The simple way to think about it is, if I'm here and you're here, the whole goal of the tariff is to just do this. Make it proportional. Right. Make these things proportional. That's the math. That math does work.
They were saying in some of the, and I saw it in an article that was quite critical, and it said it was haphazardly done because they were just matching trade deficits.
So here's another thing that let's debunk that as well. So
yeah, please.
Can you explain the trade deficit between two countries and how that works?
So how does a trade deficit work? So for example, let's just say between the United States and China, they send us $10 of goods. We send them $1 of goods. That's a $9 deficit, right? We're bringing in more than we send out. Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's an entire economy of Chinese companies that get supported with the $10 of money that we give them. There's only $1 that benefits American companies. That's a trade imbalance. It creates a deficit. Now, by the way, it's not that a deficit is bad. Okay, sometimes you want a deficit, sometimes you want a surplus, but you want to be able to pick and choose where you want to be at any time with any country, right? That would make sense. That's like, hey man, I'm not going to just take this at face value. I'm going to evaluate the conditions and I'm just going to tweak the knobs every now and then to make sure that I know where I'm at. Some countries may be so strategically important, we're like, you know what, we're going to run deficits with you. That's cool. You guys build up some stuff, but on the back end, let's talk about some other deals we could do. Give us some critical things that we need. And we're cool running a deficit. Some other countries where maybe we don't get as much from them as we have historically or we should run a surplus. But let me just make sure that you guys also know one other thing about these last couple days. A lot of people started to try to make a meme out of like, oh, look, this country's only got penguins, and that country only, is in the middle of nowhere. Here's a really important thing to understand what has happened over the last 25 years. Every single time anybody has tried to fix these imbalances, what companies were able to do was just to go to a different country that wasn't affected and basically mule their way into America. Okay.
So if you levy these taxes on every single country, they won't be able to do that.
You close all the loopholes.
Got it. So it seems like an imbalance when you throw it on Lesotho, but you're really doing it as a preemptive measure so that all the manufacturing doesn't go from Cambodia to Lesotho overnight.
And the thing with that is like, it's not like they're going to build a factory there.
Right.
They may just use it as a way station, the plane lands, hop, skip, and a jump. Now you get a form that goes, boom, made in Lesotho, boom, to the United States.
So you make it in China, send it to Lesotho. We buy it from Lesotho. There's no tariff on Lesotho because,
What Trump was really doing was forcing China to face a truth it didn't want to, that America was the market it needed more than the other way around. He calls it a wake-up call, not a war. In global economics, there's one fact we rarely talk about. The United States holds the strongest card of all, consumer demand. Nearly 70% of its GDP comes from consumption. Americans buy more, and from everywhere. That means the US can shift where it shops. China? It can't shift where it sells easily. Have a listen to Steve Moran, an American economist and current chair of the Council of Economic Advisors since March 2025.
China has developed factories for selling to the U.S. consumer market. They have trained workers for selling to the U.S. consumer market. We can move our demand across borders. Those factories and citizens cannot move. They're stuck where they are. And so the incidence will fall on them, just as in the property tax example, right? Now, does this automatically happen on day one? No. But will this happen in the fullness of time? Absolutely. This is just the basic economics of incidence in public finance. And and if the incidence is falling on other countries because they're inflexible, the Chinese now have to find someplace else to absorb their demand, to absorb their excess supply. And guess what? There isn't anywhere else to absorb their excess supply. Who's going to buy as much as American consumers? Nobody, right? There is no place else to absorb their excess supply.
And that's exactly what started happening. Apple began moving assembly lines to India. Fashion brands moved to Vietnam. Even Chinese people in business realized China cannot afford to act tough in the face of the mighty USA. Honestly, these past few days, I just can't stand it anymore. Stop talking about raising tariffs and standing strong, like it's some action movie. Trying to act tough is a fast track to self-destruction. Making money, that's the real deal. The US, 350 million people, controls a third of the world's consumer market. You know what that means? Out of every $3 spent worldwide, one comes from an American wallet. The EU has 450 million people, but their spending power doesn't even come close to the US. We've got 1.4 billion people working our butts off making stuff, but our buying power is only a fifth of America's. The numbers are right there. Can cursing out the US for being a bully put food on your table? The dollars they're holding, that's the golden ticket in the global business world. Everyone's shouting, we don't need the US market. Wake up. You go sell in Southeast Asia. You're getting paid in Indonesian rupiah. Go to South America, it's pesos. The exchange rates will chop you up before you even get your money. But when you sell to America, you're getting paid in US dollars, spendable anywhere in the world. Look at the Russia-Ukraine war, all hell's broken loose, but the US dollar is still sitting pretty on the world's throne. That's reality. Step outside the dollar system and you don't even have a ticket to the international trade game. And don't give me that, let's shift to Africa, Asia, and Latin America talk either. Our African brothers? A lot of them don't even have reliable electricity. How are they going to buy your fancy appliances? India looks like a big market? Sure. But good luck getting paid, they'll drag it out till your business goes bankrupt. Only America, with its 300+ million middle-class consumers, is standing there with open wallets. No scams, no delayed payments. Even with all the sanctions these past couple of years, it's still the cleanest market on earth. Compared to places where you have to deal with bribes and shakedowns, the US is like a business paradise. Here's the thing. Capital is 10,000 times smarter than you or me. Norway's sovereign wealth fund, Middle Eastern oil money, national pension funds from all over the world, they've all poured their cash into the US stock market. Don't you think those countries want to act tough too? But reality is, without the US, the world's biggest consumption engine, your products won't even get the chance to break even, let alone make a profit. Rely on Russia? Iran? Come on. They're barely staying alive by selling off their resources. It's easy to curse American hegemony. It's a lot harder to face reality. At the end of the day, the global supply chain boils down to one simple truth. Whoever holds the purchasing power holds the power, period. The US has 5% of the world's population but controls a third of its consumption. That's absolute market dominance. You can hate it all you want. But when 70% of your manufacturing depends on exports and 80% of your foreign reserves rely on trade, losing the US market is basically cutting off your own lifeline. For those shouting, "We'd rather not make money from America," listen up. Ordinary people need to eat. Companies need to pay salaries. The government needs foreign currency reserves. If you really want to play hardball with the US hurting each other in the process, who ends up losing? It's the workers on the assembly lines. It's the small business owners running factories. It's every regular person trying to make a living through exports. Trying to act tough in the face of overwhelming market power? That's just plain stupidity. If it's time to bow your head and negotiate, then bow your head. If it's time to cut profits, then cut profits. Right now, keeping your job is more important than anything else. I'm just a high school dropout, but even I know. In the business world, pride means nothing. Only supply and demand matter. You have no idea how sweet the American market is until you look at the real numbers. Instead of shouting slogans, better to figure out how to play by their rules and make money. Fill your pockets with US dollars first, then you can talk about upgrading industries or ditching the dollar. Otherwise, it's just nonsense. Bowing your head to make money? Nothing shameful about that. But gambling ordinary people's livelihoods just to save face? Now that's real stupidity. In my narrow opinion, if making life better for regular people means we have to crawl to make money, then so be it. The China Plus One strategy became real. China may look unstoppable from the outside. It makes 35% of the world's electronics. It's the world's top EV producer. But it also has cracks. A shrinking working age population, skyrocketing youth unemployment, overbuilt real estate and idle factories, and growing global distrust. Dependency on exports is now a risk, and with more countries tightening access, China's flexibility is shrinking. This isn't about isolation, it's about rules. The US isn't trying to shut China out, it's trying to reset the game. Rebuild chipmaking at home, form new trade frameworks like IPF and USMCA, enforce fairer practices on IP, digital trade, and subsidies. As Chamath said, this isn't anti-China. It's pro-sustainability, pro-reciprocity. It's about saying, if you want access to the most powerful economy in the world, play by the same rules. Beyond tariffs and trade balances lies a deeper strategic concern: the potential fragmentation of Western alliances. China's long-term strategy may involve encouraging divisions among Western nations to weaken collective economic and political strength. Jamie Dimon warns that adversaries aim to dismantle the rules-based international system led by America and its allies. He emphasizes that if Western alliances fracture, individual nations may become more susceptible to economic and political coercion.
China and Russia have made it clear they want to kind of dismantle the post-World War II system. And I think the goal of all this trade stuff should be to make Europe and our trading partners, Japan, Korea, Philippines, stronger, not weaker, bring them closer as we build up our military. And any trade that protects military, that we should definitely do. I mean, we made a lot of mistakes about, as you know, pharmaceuticals, shipping, pharmaceutical ingredients, penicillin.
That we're so reliant on China for all of this stuff.
We can't rely on any potential adversary for things we need for our military. And so, there I'm quite sympathetic. That we should do, that's absolutely paramount. But the point about national security is economic security, national security are almost directly related in the long run. Hopefully when these wars get resolved, and I hope in the interest of Ukraine, where they have sovereignty when it's over, and the interest of Israel, we're not being constantly attacked by terrorists on three sides, you need to keep the economic alliance together. I think it would be in Russia's and North Korea's, Iran's, and China's interest to fragment the Western world. And I think that would be the biggest long-term mistake, and I'm talking about over 30 or 40 years. I don't want to read the book about how the West was lost.
Dimon underscores the urgency of addressing these challenges, stating that the actions taken in the next decade could determine the fate of the free and democratic world for the next century. The real battle isn't about goods crossing borders. It's about the rules that govern them. The tariff war might fade, but the demand for fairness. And the deeper truth is this: if we want global prosperity, we need global balance, not just of trade, but of trust. In the end, this story is bigger than tariffs, trade, or even China. It's about the future we choose to build, one based on fairness, resilience, and truth. The world doesn't need another war, it needs clarity, and the courage to change the rules before the rules change us. If you found this story insightful, take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We dive deep into the stories behind the headlines, so you don't just hear the news, you understand it.